Welcome to the Seven Figure Builder Show. My name is Julie Baranek, founder of Seven Figure Builder, where we help high achieving CEOs work smarter, not harder, with gorgeous insights to scale to seven figures and beyond. And I'm here today with my friend, Dr. Heather Browne. Hey, Heather.
Hi.
How are you? I'm thrilled to have you on today.
Oh, I am absolutely honored. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. So, first and foremost, where in the world are you?
I'm in California. So Orange County, California.
Beautiful. So, you have lots of sun out there as well.
It's been a really rainy spring for us.
Really?
And
Wow.
cold. So it's interesting, but I'm so blessed. It's a gorgeous place to live.
Yeah, that is for sure. So, for people that haven't had the pleasure to meet you yet, can you tell us just a little bit about what you do with your business?
Sure. I've been a psychotherapist for 27 years. And in the last couple of years, that has also started to include business coaching as well and some relationship coaching. I'm an author and I'm active on a lot of the social media, TikTok and YouTube and LinkedIn and all of that. I have workshops and I have programs. So kind of hitting it from all the different angles.
Absolutely. And that makes total sense that a natural progression into mindset with business, as you've been in business for quite a while, but have lots of expertise. And that's such a huge blocker for business owners. At multiple stages in their business, it looks a little bit different. But what do you see as that progression as people build their business and scale their business, that mindset can play into it?
It's huge. And it really is the place of staying true to the heart of what you're here for, the message that you have. Communication within business is very much like communication in any relationship. We're just wearing different shoes and a different hat, but the same challenges happen. And so the same challenges happen within us as well. And so when you really give yourself that time to find out what is my message, what is my purpose, who am I trying to reach, and what am I trying to say, it starts to morph pretty naturally to bigger and bigger platforms. I just got picked up for a TEDx, and it'll be my first really large speaking gig. But when I thought about it, I thought, okay, but I'm talking on TikTok in front of hundreds of thousands of people. This is going to be a small little group, and
Yeah.
maybe it will reach 1 million people online. Who knows? But it really is the core of the message, and it's just more eyeballs or more dollars coming your way, but really owning what your truth is and why you're here. And then repackaging, of course, to make it a little slicker, a little softer, a little more seasonal, whatever might be needed and necessary within the people that you serve. And that's key, knowing who you serve, why you serve, and what they are continually needing you to guide them in.
Yeah.
That will grow you as you need to grow.
For sure. And you hit on a couple key things there, but it takes me back to earlier in my corporate career of you get in those interviews or those meetings of the CEOs and different people and you get so nervous. And I used to remind myself, like, they're human, just like I am. And it's the same kind of thing. Like you go back to your core message that you know so well in your business, because that's why you do what you do. But you're just repackaging it a little bit different in front of a couple different people. And it's easy to get in our own way and like psych ourselves out. But I think that's really cool to position it that way in our own minds.
Well, and we all have needs.
Mm-hmm.
And we all have places where we might be a little short-sighted and we need a little help or just don't have the education. I'm working with a very high COO right now, and he was talking about how his team views him and how he views himself. And he kept talking about himself third person. And I said, well, I'm right here and I'm just really kind of interested in the whole package. So who are you wanting me to be with you? Am I part of your team? Am I your therapist? Or am I your coach? Like, what's the role you want for me? And he took a really deep breath. He goes, I think I really need a coach. And I said, great. And that's what I am. Here's a great nugget. When you're feeling that uncertainty, reach in and find out what that COO, that CFO, that CEO is wanting. That's why you're there. And so when you find out what it is that they need, then it clarifies it. If he had come back and he said, I need you to be my CFO, I would have been like, oh, but I do know how to be a coach.
Right.
And I do know how to be a therapist.
Right.
I could figure out how to be part of his team. But there's the refinement of, okay, so what is it that you are hoping for in this interaction? How do I help you find what it is that you don't yet feel really comfortable with? And then they start to see that you are there really caring about their situation and you're being respectful of their situation. So it's a little less hard for them to say, I struggle with this or this. And I know my last coaching with him, it was amazing because he was revealing his insecurities. And then I could bolster him up by saying, well, do you see how that's creating a challenge over here with this person? So finding that refinement of how do I serve you? What's lacking? What's needing? That's the key, always.
Yeah. Yeah. And our needs change over the years. Like no matter where we are and whatever role we are, and no matter how high we are in our company and how we serve, like, it's critical that we all need that support. And it's so easy for our egos to get in our way sometimes to say, like, well, I need to know what I'm doing. I don't need to ask for help. And it's the smart people that actually ask for help to complement their weaknesses and build themselves up and make themselves more effective in wherever they're struggling, right?
I think you need it sometimes. I don't like to say more so, but very differently when you are at those higher levels.
Totally.
Because there is more responsibility on your shoulders. There is more expected of you. And people do start to have a different assumption, expectation upon you because of that. I have counseled pastors and rabbis, and they have said it's so important for them to have somebody that they can be real with. And they'll say, like, you know me. Whereas people in their congregation or their temple, maybe not so much, because there's an image that people are either needing of them or they're presenting.
Yeah.
And certainly when we're in upper management, there is an image you need to present. And there's a lot that you need to take care of. And that doesn't touch upon sometimes those places of, I don't really know what to do here, or my personal challenge is really rearing its head here, or I'm holding on and trying to control because I'm nervous and uncomfortable and I don't know if that's really the best choice here.
Right.
Honesty in a company, it's so critical, and yet it's also very important where it's placed and when it's placed.
Yeah. Yeah. And it requires being vulnerable. And nobody likes to be vulnerable more than likely, especially as a leader in your organization. Like you're the guiding light that they're following. So it is hard to be vulnerable and you feel like you create uncertainty with your team. But in reality, when you have people guiding you, you're just that much stronger in the direction that you're going and not getting lost.
And they need to know that you are that way too.
Yeah.
I remember when I first started doing therapy and people would say, like, you're human. Like, of course I'm human. But they view you in a certain role. And so then they can't see you beyond that role. It's if you see a boss out in public and you're like, oh, hello, instead of, hey, John.
Right.
Because there's a different relationship.
Yeah. So what do you find in working with leaders all around the world, but what do you find makes a good leader?
Oh, there's so many things. Compassion is very important for their product, for their message, for their mission, for their people, for their team. A willingness to learn is unbelievably important. Accountability. You've got to have really clear-cut accountability and balance. There needs to be a balance between work, life, family, world, to not be short-sighted and just the business side. But openness and willingness, I think, is some of the most important traits we could have as humans in this world, to know that there always is a different way. Emotional intelligence has becoming more and more and more important the more I've worked in corporate. A lot of people have a hard time communicating well, and they have a certain way of doing it, which might not work for everyone. And so I've really spent time coming up with, well, how do you start the best conversation? How do you start the best meeting where you need to let somebody know of a challenge or a problem? What are the ways that you can consciously decide the outcome that you want to have and then try to guide it along that path so you're not meandering or feeling lost or confused or overly worried? And I think that a lot of people in business don't do that. They just sit down and start talking. There's also the place of realizing if you've been thinking about something for a while, and then let's say you pull in your manager and you say, we need to talk about this. It's really important to have the awareness that your manager might not be aware that you're going to be talking about this.
Right.
So when you start to come to them and say, this is a problem and this is an issue and what are you doing about this? And your manager looks at you kind of overwhelmed or confused. It's not because they're not on top of things necessarily, but they haven't known you have been processing this. And I don't think we really hardly ever think about that. We're up to speed. We got to deal with this now. And the person's kind of blindsided. So I always suggest in business to send out, I'd like to talk about this. These are some concerns I have. I'd like you to think about it. And then let's sit down together and figure out where we can go. Because that way you've got the person joining you. And a huge challenge I see in business is that you don't have your people joining you. They're afraid of you. Or they really don't really like you sometimes. Or they feel like they have to take care of you. And none of those create a good work environment.
Yeah, no, none of those are healthy. It's
None.
the difference between, hey, can I talk to you? Like, are you free to talk now? And are you free to talk about XYZ? So people can at least get in that frame of mind and their own anxiety doesn't come surfacing of like, all right, I'm canned, or what is this about? And people worry so often.
Yeah.
But
I use reframing a lot because that's incredibly helpful anywhere, but certainly in business. If someone is sitting down with you and you're not being fired, what they are saying is, we want this to go better.
Right.
This does need to be changed, but let's look at what we're doing. I'm committing still to you and in you. And it's important that you recognize that and to use what is being brought to you for growth and see it in a much bigger picture than I'm not perfect. Of course you're not. And would you want to be? I don't want to be perfect right now. I'm 59. That would mean for the next 40 years, nothing gets better. Dear God, a lot better get better in the next 40 years. So if we change our thought process into, yeah, bring it. Bring it. I want to know where I can be better. Help me be even more amazing than I've already been. Then tomorrow you're a better asset as an employee. And as an owner or a CFO, you have just leveled up your team. So growth minded is incredibly, it's life-giving. It's not only important, it's life-giving for a corporation.
Absolutely. And you mentioned worry earlier, but we've seen so much of a trend of anxiety and worry, both at the executive level and at the everybody level. So like, what have you seen and how have you seen that impacted? And what do you recommend for people that are dealing with that every day?
Well, it'll erode a company if you don't deal with it, because what you're saying is, I'm afraid to go certain places and certain places feel risky. I look at things really differently. It's why they call me the reframe queen. And so what I say is, anxiety is one and resistance. They're both some of the very best teachers for you. So instead of looking at it as like, oh, I feel uncomfortable, my viewpoint is fantastic, because that means something's not working.
Right.
So what do we need to do to bring more support? What do we need to do to bring more clarity? What do we need to do to bring more education? I don't want you staying in a place of anxiousness or worry, but that also means that you're probably either not doing all you need to do for you, or you're not asking me for what you need of me. So let's get this conversation open and let's figure out what's needed. If you allow yourself to look at anxiety, fear, worry, doubt as a teacher, I'm not in a good place. Good to know. I need to figure out what to do to help me move. It's very valuable, but we look at it mostly in a negative, and then we try to hide it and suppress it. And it's not going to do that, because it's here to teach. So when you try to suppress something that's going to teach, it's just going to keep teaching and teaching and teaching and teaching until you look at it. Exactly. It's like lights on the dashboard. Check your oil. It might not need to be checked. Maybe it's something else, but it's guiding you toward like, something's not quite right. Let's find out what it is. And so if you look at anxiety, worry, fear, resistance as all of those, I tell people I love resistance. It's totally uncomfortable, but I love it, because that means I'm about to get along with you so much better as long as I care about you. Let me know where this isn't lining up for you. Let me know where you don't understand. Let me know where you're pulling back. Help me understand what it is that you need. You need this? Bring it. You need this? I can't do that. That's not appropriate, but we could do it like this. It's all ways to work together better. But for some reason, we don't look at it that way. And then we just stay in fear, and then we hide, and then we pretend, and then we're not productive because you're not going to be nearly as willing to take a risk when you're in fear. And a company needs to have people saying, well, what about this? Could we do this? What do you think about this? You need your out of the boxers. And anxiety and fear really like hammer down that lid of the box on you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's important to remember too that when we're coasting and we're not uncomfortable, that's not when we grow, right? Like we grow the most when we're uncomfortable. And so often we don't equate, at least personally, we don't equate anxiety and fear with that growing uncomfortable, being out of your comfort zone, right? Like they feel different. But yet at the same time, to your point, like that's where you get things back in alignment, or you realize you need to change, or you realize something needs to happen. And ultimately that means you're growing, right? Both personally, as an organization, as a team, whatever that looks like.
Well, and if you look at discomfort in the physical body, if I have overworked my abs and then I wake up the next morning, I'm like, oh my gosh, this hurts so bad. It's like, it hurts to breathe. I know what it's from.
Right.
Anxiety is from the mind.
Right.
And so we don't always know where it's from. And because it's from the mind, we don't always get that specific clarity, like, oh, it was the ab workout yesterday. So there's a little deciphering to figure out what are you about. But if you do allow yourself to go down that path, you will eventually find what it is or how to answer to it. It's just easier for us when it seems a little bit more direct, and anxiety doesn't quite so much. But anxiety is a thought challenge construct. So of course it can't be like it's my abs, because you're worried about something that's not quite yet here. You're worried about something you're not quite sure of. And so it's not like I just worked out my abs. It's like, will this happen? Will this work? It's all the wonder aspect. And so it does stay a little aloof, if you will.
Yeah. And along with that, I mean, so often as you're growing in your business and your roles, it can be very lonely at the top. Like, what do you see as far as people maintaining friendships, creating friendships, having like the non-employee people around you, or not feeling like you're selling? Like, what do you see, and what do you encourage people to feel connected and not deal with that loneliness?
Oh, it's so important. And the challenge that I see for a lot of entrepreneurs, it's why burnout is so high, is that they feel like they can't stop working because I should do one more post, I should send one more email, I should try to sell one more thing. And they lose that balance. I know I have myself as well. I wrote a book this last year, and to be able to do that and to get it done, it meant about 4 or 5 months of giving away most of my weekends.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the best thing for me to be a grounded, healthy, happy individual. It's just not. I need to have weekends to go play and see things and hike. But if I let myself write the book when I felt like writing the book, it wasn't going to get done. So I had to say to myself, okay, are you willing to give up the weekends? And doing so, what's going to happen? Well, my body was definitely going to get softer because I wasn't going to have as much exercise. I wasn't going to have as much fun. So I needed to be aware of that. And so I had to tell myself, I can only do this for so long. And then I need to get really back into a different balance. What I see is it doesn't end. I have a gentleman I work with, and he's a master chef. He literally works 6 days a week, 17 hours a day.
Wow.
And he's on call the 7th day.
Oh my God.
He is married. He is married. That's all I can say about that. Like, there's not much of a relationship. And I keep saying, like, I know you love what you do. I know that. And I'm so glad you do. That's wonderful. Is there more to life than what you do? And he's having a hard time because he's not comfortable with being social or downtime, because so much of his value has been in what he presents. And so we're working on helping him feel fulfilled within himself, not being behind the stove.
Yeah.
And it's a difficult place. When you're really good at what you do, it's kind of a double-edged sword because you get a lot of fulfillment. I love being a coach and a therapist, and my clients adore me. So I can go work a ton and feel like I'm amazing. And yet my body is soft, or my house is messy, or I haven't been to the dentist, or I'm lonely at night. So what I try to do is every month I'll sit down with myself and I'll say, okay, how have I done career-wise? How have I done health-wise? How have I done financially? How have I done emotionally? How have I done spiritually? How have I done communally? And COVID made that really difficult.
Yeah.
We're largely post-COVID, and a lot of us have not quite veered yet. And I think it's important that we find that balance once again. So check in with yourself. Are you working out? Are you eating well? Are your kids happy? Is your spouse happy? Can you take a vacation? Is there room for things beyond the company? Yeah,
Yeah. And it's hard to keep that in balance when
very hard.
your role is clear cut. Like when you're really good at what you do, like you mentioned, it's easy to get sucked back in. It's fulfilling. You get affirmation. Like people tell you do great, and it's, what to do. Where at home, it can be much more murky to have those. You have to be vulnerable. You have to invest yourself. Like it's a different dynamic. And like, what do you recommend for people in their home lives and their marriages? And like when they're struggling with that balance, what would you recommend to them?
Well, when they are struggling with that balance, it's a huge key that something is off balance. And so to sit down with everybody in the family, I did something that I'm so glad I did, and I share it with all my clients, is every month I would sit down. I'm a widow and my kids are grown now, but every month I would sit down with my husband and with my kids individually. And I'd say, in this last month, where have I loved you really, really well? And then they would tell me, and then I would keep doing it because whatever, it was important to them. And then I'd say, and where am I blowing it? And then they would tell me. And then I would focus on that as well. So to me, it's vital, especially for spouses, to be connected and to say, like, how am I showing up for you? Are you feeling that I have heard you, seen you, cared about you today? Every day I would say, is there any way I could love you a little bit better right now? I'll hear so many people say that they're kind of just the breadwinner and their roommates.
Yeah.
That is on you. It doesn't have to be that way. I guarantee every single person who got married never wanted to say 10 years down the road, I want to be your roommate. No one wanted that.
Roommate.
Everyone wanted to be loved, adored, attacked. I mean, we all did. That's how we got married. And so if that's not going on, really take ownership for that. You can change it. You absolutely can, as long as both people are open to it. But no one goes into a relationship wanting the relationship to end, whether it's marriage or not. You want it to be amazing. Right. So what's keeping it from being amazing is you, and then also your partner. And so talk about that. Keep it fresh. It can be hard to do that when you're with someone for 25 years, but there's all sorts of things you can do to keep passion going. You need vacations. You do. You need dates. You need time away from the kids. You also need time with the kids alone, daddy dates, mommy dates. You want to build individual relationship, and that's vital. You do that with your corporation, individual projects, individual tasks, individual outcomes. Why do we not do that with our family or with ourselves?
Right. Even scheduled one-on-ones with your employees, but not with your family members.
Yeah. When I said to my husband, I think you need to have daddy dates. And he said, oh, that sounds so fun. I'm like, yeah, because he was working in mortgage. So he also had horrendous hours. And I said, and I did something. I was so grateful I knew to do this. He was working 15 hours a day, 6 days a week at the peak before the mortgage crash. And so I would take the kids to work and we'd have a picnic dinner in a park outside. And all of his people at his company were like, you've got the best wife in the world. But I also did it selfishly. Like, the kids were going to grow up not knowing their father that well. And I wanted him to be a part of that. They were like amazing little children, and he was missing so much, and I didn't want him to. So there's the place of looking at, yes, I'm crazy successful here, or very, very focused here, but what's being sacrificed? I am a widow, And so it's been 8 years. It's fine, but it's not the same as being in a relationship. And I'm sure there were many times I didn't engage as much as I could have. And that's unfortunate because at some point it might be gone. And I know at the end of my life, though I will be revered for being a great therapist and coach, at the end of my life, what I'm going to really care about is whose heart did I touch?
Mhm.
And I don't want it to just be people in the office. It's got to be my kids. It needed to be my husband. It needs to be my friends. So there's the place of, is your heart being fed? Is your soul being fed? Is your spirit being fed? Not just your pocketbook and your ego. Those are important, but they're not the only important thing. You need to feel good about yourself outside of the office as well.
Yeah. And that's your true legacy is your family, your kids, your like, what do you leave behind? I mean, when you leave a corporation, even your own corporation, you sell it, you exit, they move on, right? Like you've built something, you now have it in your pocketbook, but what are those connections that when you're gone, people are going to remember for the rest of their lives that you made a huge impact in their life?
And such an important thing is people forget that we really do want to love each other and we want to be loved. And I'll say that to couples in my office a lot. Remember that. I say that to CEOs. Remember your staff want you to be pleased with them and you want to be pleased with them. So if that's not going on, figure out why that's happening because that wasn't the reason for them to be hired. And that wasn't the reason they signed on. Marriage, the same way. We just forget that the people in our life probably want to be loved. And we focus on how we don't feel loved instead of focusing on how can I bring more love? How can I bring more support or help to the people at work? Check-ins are so important, be it your family, your wife, your corporation. Like, how are we doing? Where are we doing well? What more do you want? Is anything missing that's important to you? You'll have unbelievably loyal staff if they really feel you care for them. I'm not going to get the statistics right, but I think it was like 20%, an interview on Forbes where you could be paying 20% less. I'm not encouraging you to do this. You could be paying 20% less than in the market if it was an amazingly supportive, encouraging growth mindset corporation. Because people will stay for a while for more money, but not eventually. We want to be valued. It's important.
Yeah.
And we live a long life and then you work a long time. 40 years, dear God, that's a lot of time. You want to make certain that you're enjoying the ride as well.
Absolutely. So we've touched on a lot of things, but how do you define success? Like, what does that look like to you? And what do you encourage your clients with that?
Mine is really simple, but I think in some ways it's hard to do. Pleasure within your life, whatever that looks like. Really, comfort, pleasure, joy, freedom, excitement, awe, wonder in your life. It can be romantic, it can be financial, but really feeling, I am so glad to be alive and being able to do this and be me and be with you. And I'll tell my clients, I want you to really focus on what you're feeling, what you're thinking, and what you're doing. They're all three vitally important. And when you have them lining up, oh my gosh, like your life is bliss. And when they're not, there's something there for you to find to help yourself get back in alignment.
Yeah. And how do you encourage business owners to have fun in their business again? I mean, it's so important that we enjoy what we're doing and not get into that burnout phase.
There's so many ways you can do it. And a lot of it depends upon the culture that you create. When COVID hit, I had a company that they've got a great culture, really fun, playful. He would do like donut mornings and they'd have coffee shop things and masseuse. And so what I would tease him with is like, how about Pizza Friday? He goes, what do you mean? I said, how about you just send everybody a pizza at the noontime meeting and knock on their door. There's going to be a pizza or birthday parties. We would send a cake. We'd send balloons and they would have a little birthday box with little things that they would need, like blowers and streamers and all of that. And so they'd get on the Zoom call and they'd be like, happy birthday, and ways to just encourage them. But like, why not have fun? You can do scavenger hunts. I have a company that does Spartan races together.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, they have fitness challenges. Some companies do Airbnbs and they'll do like a corporate summit with great speakers or go to lovely places. But celebrate people, celebrate birthdays, celebrate achievement, lift people up. So oftentimes the focus is you have to be the best. It's great when you are, but how about finding ways to let everybody shine in whatever way it is? Secret Santas and things like that are really fun, or surprises. I used to cut lunch notes for my kids. There's a term for it where you would cut with paper, and it's really ornate. It's a Japanese art form, and it's great. You could do bunnies and bears and all of that. And my son came home, I think he was 15, and he came home one day and he goes, you forgot the note. And I went, oh my gosh, Mac, I'm so sorry. He's like, yeah, it's no big deal. And
Obviously
I'm like,
it was.
oh yeah, it was. So there was a note on his dinner, and then I never forgot again. And when he went off to boot camp, we were packing his things up. We came to a box in his closet and he opened it up, and guess what was inside? He saved it all of those non-important notes. You don't know how important you are. And the key is by making the other person important.
Yeah.
So make everybody in your corporation important in some way, value them, reach out to them. It can simply be an email that you just say, I hope you had a great weekend. I hope we have a great week. I'm thinking about you. Follow up if there's something important. This is something I do in my practice and my clients love it. If they're having a surgery, I'll reach out the night before and say, I'm praying for you. Please let me know. If they're having a baby, I'll tell them, like, I want a photo at some point. If they're going away for like a re-wedding, I'll say, I get a photo, and they send it to me. And I have all these beautiful photos, clinking champagne glasses. They send me photos like, here's the ring. Like, you want them to know they're important to you. They're not just a paycheck. They're a person. And so when you find out those things, then it becomes easy. You see a sale on yarn and you've got 15 knitters at your company. Well, you buy some yarn. There's lots of ways to let people know that they're important and they're valued and you care about them.
That's huge.
And
Yeah.
appropriately.
Right. Yeah. You don't want to stalk your employees either, but
no, and you don't want them showing up at your doorstep late at night either. So
right. For sure. So what do you have coming up? You've got amazing work that you're doing, but what's the most life-changing goal for you this year?
Well, I have a couple. I do a monthly workshop, which is really, really fun. And so that's always an ongoing with different themes. But I'm doing a TEDx on September 23rd, which I'm very excited about. We're still working on my talk. It's getting really beautiful. So I'm very excited about that. And then I am about to send out my couples communication book to publishers. I'll be sending it out in the next 2 weeks. And so I am hoping I'll get an offer back sometime in the next month and a half. And then that book would be out next year. And then I'm also in I shouldn't say final stages, 3/4 stages of writing a book on anxiety with a yoga instructor. And we are blending the mind, body, breath mantra with the emotion, the history of your childhood and the mental reframe. And it's been fascinating to work with her because we come at it from completely different sides.
Yes.
And it's been hard. Like our conversations, they're always hard, but we get to like, at one point we're like, oh my gosh, because I am stretching her in ways that she would never, and she's completely stretching me. And it's going to be really good. I'm really excited. Yeah. So lots of things.
Awesome. So for people that are like chomping at the bit, they want to get a hold of you, where can they find you online?
So my easiest place is my website. So it's www.drheatherbrowne.com, Dr. Heather Browne. And everything's there, all my social media, my newsletter. There's a whole page of freebies. So I've got one on conscious communication and 3 ways to step out of a fight and self-love. There's a ton of stuff. I'm a prolific writer. So feel free, my workshop. I'll be bringing my program back, my 6-week communication program, probably right after the TEDx goes live, I'm thinking that would be a good time to offer it once again. But also, if you have questions, or if anybody wants to ask me anything specific, just reach out. I'm happy to answer anything I can for your listeners. I love helping and supporting people wherever they are in their journey.
Absolutely. And we'll have all the links below for everyone to come click and check it out. But if you had the attention of the whole world for 5 minutes, what would you tell them?
Let yourself offer love and live in love and be love as much as you possibly can. It's a long life, but it's also a short life. You want to make certain you're really enjoying it deeply in your soul, deeply in your heart. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, that's so powerful. Awesome. Well, thank you, Dr. Heather, for being on
Oh,
today.
you're so welcome. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you found value in this episode, please do share it. That's how people find us, and definitely subscribe. And you can find me at sevenfigurebuilder.com. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Thank you.